Our first guest today is Dick Grove, CEO and founder of the Kansas City-based Inc. Incorporated Public Relations Agency. Dick's been in the field for more than 50 years and founded his company about 30 years ago. Prior to that, he served in the marketing C-suite at companies like ITEL Corporation and GE Capital. And his new book, It's the Media Stupid, PR Without the BS, hit shelves earlier this year. So, Mr. Dick Grove, thank you for joining us here on the Lead Balloon Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Dick, we're here to discuss a story that is tied to an indelible photo op moment in 20th century history. But I'd be remiss if I failed to ask you a little bit about your own personal history, because 50 years in the PR business, it's an incredible milestone and a whole lot of institutional knowledge to boot. So briefly, how did you get into this field and what course led you to found Inc.
Well, actually, I started out coming out of graduate school with a degree in public relations from Kansas University. I was the first ever graduate student to take that particular title. I left school with the idea that I wanted to go into public relations or advertising, certainly into mass communications if I could. And I was very lucky that I pounded the pavement in New York City without any real offers with my degree. Landed a job at one of the 2 or 3 largest PR firms in the world, Burson Marsteller. I went up there with my ill-fitting suit and was sitting there and asked the reception if anybody there would be interested in talking to me about a job. Naivete reigned in those days. So just at that time, this gentleman came out, kind of a distinguished-looking gentleman, came out and checked the old bell tower ticker tape machine, checking on stock prices that was in the lobby. And while he was there, she said, "Mr. Buchwald, is there anybody here that could talk to this gentleman about a job?" And he looked at his watch. He said, "I got a few minutes. Come on in." And so I went in, and serendipity struck. Within 20 minutes, this gentleman, who happened to be the vice chairman of the board of Burson Marsteller, who I had no idea, simply said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you a job because I like you from your Kansas. I want that viewpoint in our New York office." And he said, "But under one condition. If you turn into a New Yorker in 6 months, and believe me, I will check, I'm going to fire your ass."
Dick Grove did not turn into a New Yorker, though Burson Marsteller turned out to be an excellent proving ground for him. And then his career took him to Michigan, Illinois, and eventually California. After spending time in the agency world, he took a couple of jobs for companies in the newly established technology sector before founding his own firm 30 years ago. And that is where we arrive at the iconic photo op on the White House lawn. It was 1993, and that handshake between Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chair Yasser Arafat was as close as the world has ever come to ending centuries of war between Jews and Muslims who stake their religious and cultural heritage in that little piece of contested ground. The Oslo Accords marked the first time that the PLO had acknowledged Israel's right to exist as a nation and created the framework for the Palestinian National Authority, which established some right to Palestinian self-governance. It represented a step forward and a compromise by both sides, and it created a venue for direct peace talks, which is to say that there were extremists on either side who absolutely hated it. But to most people, that iconic photograph opened the door for just a sliver of hope. And Dick Grove says it also commanded the entire narrative about the state of Jewish affairs in the world. Now, mind you, I remember reading about this moment in my 4th grade weekly reader publication from Scholastic. But what do you personally remember about this photo op?
I remember seeing it on the front page of the national media, and I remember thinking, boy, that's pretty cool. That Clinton, who I happened to be a fan of at the time, had managed to get both of them together and shake their hands. Hopefully it was going to mean that something was going to come out of it. What I didn't realize was what that photograph had done in terms of affecting a fundraising effort by a client that was soon to become a client of mine. I remember it was less than a month after that I was sitting having lunch in Los Angeles, and I got a phone call from the chairman of the United Jewish Appeal, and a gentleman by the name of Marty Stein at the time, who has since passed on. And Marty sat on the board of a couple of my clients in the Milwaukee area. Marty called me and said, would you be interested in helping us with a PR effort that we think is going to be necessary to increase the fundraising on the United Jewish Appeal, which I'd never actually heard of. So he said, if you could, we have a Jewish PR firm, but we'd very much like to have you because I know you've proved to me that on your other clients that you've been able to do things. So with that, I flew to New York. And I met with Marty, and I met with a gentleman by the name of Ron Friedman, who was running this operation. And it turns out it was called Operation Exodus.